one piece of career advice do you wish someone had given you when you started out?
Yeah, it's a great question, and glad I had some time to think about this. Obviously, there's a lot in my career that I wish had gone somewhat differently, but there are a couple of things that stood out to me when I thought about the question. In my career, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things, and so what I mean with that is I started off in project management, moved into marketing, had both regional roles and global roles in big corporations and startups. And so for me, one of the takeaways was I would have loved to know more about how to better plan your career. Early on in my career, I was always of the opinion that when you start an expertise, you have to go really deep and then you grow from within that expertise into a management type role. What I've learned and what I would have loved to hear earlier in my career is that it's important to not just get deep expertise in one area, but build up broader experience across multiple, whether it's functions or skill sets. And so if I look at my career, I had the opportunity to look at all those different functions, which made me, at least that's what I feel, a more broader, well-rounded individual, being able to be better prepared for general management type functions. And so to come back to your question, if I think about what I'd love to have is, don't be too worried about growing too rapidly or get promotions into a certain expertise area, but try to broaden your skill set and your expertise across different functions or different areas to be a more well-rounded person, as opposed to moving up very rapidly and then hitting a ceiling at some point just from a expertise area. So that is where I think I would have benefited in my career.
Share a pivotal moment in your career that made a significant impact.
Yeah, great question, Drew. And my answer is going to link back somewhat to the previous one. Early in my career, I was an individual contributor. So I was doing the job myself, the work myself. I was responsible for my deliverables. About midway through my career, I changed to a team manager. So I received a team, I got promoted. And so I was responsible for the individuals in my team. And what I had to learn in that time was, how do I change how I work from being responsible, being in control and knowing all the details, to how do I enable my team? How do I take this group of 5, 6, 7 people and then build a team that works together and delivers more than each individual contributor? And so the pivotal moment was for me to learn how to do that, but also learning that I get satisfaction out of building the team, coaching the team, and growing the team. And so I've had a lot of success in not just delivering the deliverables that the company needed, but also working with the individuals in my team and grow them through, whether it was coaching, education, whatever that might be, helping them get promoted, whether it was within my team or externally, but really helping people grow. And so the pivotal moment was really around, how do I learn to become a team manager? How do I help people through their roles and helping them get better? And really build a coherent strategy around education, team management, leadership, and being responsible for that myself. So that stood out to me as something that A, I really enjoyed, but also B, was important for my career, because having those skills meant I could be more broadly part of the organization and move into different areas, not just in my expertise as an individual contributor, but being more of a general manager of other teams in the organization as well.
How would you approach challenges and setbacks in your professional life? And what's your go-to strategy for you that you use to overcome them?
This is a tricky one. Not that I didn't have my fair share of challenges and setbacks, but trying to think through what was my strategy through that, because often you live through a setback and sort of you naturally deal with that, as opposed to having a true on-paper strategy, if you will. There's 2 examples that I'd like to share. One is a little bit more personal, one is more related to business. And I think I applied this same type of strategy. So unfortunately, I'll start with the personal one. Unfortunately, my first example had to do with me being laid off. And I'm going to use this example because I think typically there's quite a stigma around being laid off, and you being in the recruitment business, Drew, obviously you're dealing with a lot of this. I had a great career for 17 plus years and all of a sudden I was laid off. It took me a while to figure out what that meant, because I took that firstly very personal, even though it wasn't. It had to do more with where the organization was going, and the strategy was changing, and my role, my team's role changed. And so unfortunately that impacted me. And so that was clearly a setback in where I wanted to be and where I was. What it did allow me to do, and this comes back to the strategy, is taking a step back and really try to understand, well, what does that mean for me, and how does this impact me today, but also what opportunities do I have going forward? And so I used that time, the next couple of weeks, to really look at what is it that I want to do? Where do I want to go? What is it that I'm really passionate about? What are the solutions that I can build for myself to move on from this setback, this challenge that I have today? And so really taking a step back, stepping back from my emotions towards the issue that I was having, the setback that I was having, and then thinking about, well, how do I start planning for where I want to go? And so that took me a while, but really the taking apart the emotional piece from the practical piece of, hey, what do we need to do? What do I need to do to, in this case, find a job to move forward again? Putting on paper, step by step, how do I get there? So really break it down into smaller pieces around, well, what's the first thing I need to do? What is the second thing I need to do? And really build a plan that I could follow for myself to get to where I needed to be. And so that was my first example that I wanted to share. Certainly because I think about the economy is right now, where everybody is right now, there's a lot of layoffs right now. And so this was an example that I wanted to share. Secondly, similarly, more from a professional business perspective, I was leading a professional services team for the last couple of years, where we worked a lot directly with customers. And when you deal with customers, there's always going to be unforeseen circumstances. And one of the things we often hear is, well, yes, we signed up to do X, Y, or Z, but we're too busy. We don't have the time to attend meetings. We don't have the time to do this project. And so one example that stood out was we were working with a big institution here in the US where we were trying to implement professional services, so workflow services, improvements around workflow, to deal with a hospital that was too busy. They had a lot to do, but they were not maybe focusing on the right things. And so our workflow services were supposed to help them, but the feedback we were receiving was, well, we're too busy to improve how we work to get more time. And so again, what I tried to do with my team was, well, let's take a step back, right? This customer clearly needs what we're offering. They are interested, they just can't find the time. And so how do we take a step back? Because it's often not an all or nothing approach. It's not, well, we can't do any of this. It's just that we're too busy, we've got so much on, means the customer doesn't have clarity on how to move forward. And so again, we took a step back, sat down with our champions on the customer side and talked about, well, we understand we can't do this big program, but where can we start? What is the smallest step we can take first to bring you some relief? And so really breaking it down in smaller steps, building out what that plan is, and not go for this 5 months of improvements, but what is the first step that we can do on day one that's going to take us an hour or maybe 2 hours? And so really, again, first and second example around, we'll take a step back. How do you look at what is the smallest step you can take first, the sort of the foreseeable things you can control, the things you can work on, and then start with that whilst you then open up the window for, well, what does the longer term look like? And so these two examples really, I think, resonated with me and my team around breaking it up into smaller pieces to then move forward, get the ball rolling, and then things start flowing a little bit more naturally. So yeah, this was the example that I wanted to share that I've seen, that I've used, and that worked well for me.